We're now moving on to learn about how ideas from different countries can be introduced into the UK, and we're going to hear about the Buurtzorg Model and its introduction of a new service here in the UK, and I'm going to invite their Chief Operating Officer, Paul Jansen, to come and speak to us.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Paul Jansen. I'm Chief Operating Officer of Public World. We are a small consultancy, and we also operate under the name of Buurtzorg Britain and Ireland, because that nowadays is 95% of the work that we do. As you will have picked up from my accent, I am from Holland, as is the Buurtzorg Model. That makes me perfectly qualified for the job because I'm one of the few people who can actually pronounce it. Just to explain, buurt means neighborhood, zorg means care, so Buurtzorg is very much a neighborhood care-based model, and I will explain a little bit more about how it all works and which role digital plays in the success of the model at large. Right, so Buurtzorg, I hope that you've got a flavor for it from this video. It came about 12 years ago in the Netherlands when Jos de Blok and his founder colleagues were getting increasingly frustrated with the fragmentation in the Dutch healthcare and social care system, which actually is very similar to the fragmentation we experience here in the UK today. 3, 4, 5 different people coming through the front door every single day of a person in need of care at home, based on the expectation that that's the most efficient way of working. Actually, what Jos and his colleagues assumed was by giving one person or very few persons the whole range of care responsibilities for that particular individual, client as we call them in Buurtzorg, we would actually get better outcomes and probably a reduced cost of care overall, despite the fact that, that Buurtzorg uses higher qualified staff and therefore per member of staff and per hour of staff use incurs higher cost. And his assumptions turned out to be correct. And why is that? That is because Buurtzorg uses very much what they call the onion model. You see there on the right-hand side, which starts from the patient. And Buurtzorg invests an awful lot of energy upfront to get to know the patient, to understand what this patient is all about. Who is this person? What is important for her? How can we help her achieve the independence and the self-reliance that everybody deserves so that she can go back to achieving the objectives that are, and doing the things that are important to her? That means that investment in time and energy is not just focused on delivering clinical or even personal care services, but also the other elements that are important for an individual. It could be the mental health of the individual, it could be a financial situation that plays an important role, it could be relationship issues, it could be all sorts of things. And the Buurtzorg nurse takes all of this into consideration when devising the care plan with the client. And not only that, the Buurtzorg nurse involves what we call the informal network of the client to help the informal network play a role in the care needs and the support needs of the client. So that means that a partner, children, neighbors, a local church group, a voluntary organization, they can all play a role in actually making this person more independent more quickly. It's only then that the Buurtzorg team sort of sits around that as the care coordinator or the case manager, whatever you want to call it, to help manage the various other aspects of care needs, being with the GP, the hospital, physios, occupational health, etc. So the focus on that independence also translates into helping clients understand their condition and giving them the tools and the knowledge to manage it better. Now, of course, this independence and freedom is requires a certain organizational model that allows the care professional that freedom to adjust the care as it's required and determine their own profile and priority. And that means that that in Buurtzorg we have a model of local self-managed teams, very small, 8 to 12 people maximum, that are responsible for not only providing good care to their clients, but also managing themselves. So recruiting staff, finding an office, devising their own learning and development plan, performance reviews, quality assurance, all of that lies with the teams. And you can imagine that is quite a different way of working. And I referred earlier to the cost of the model being actually more efficient, and that's based on some results, but also the way the organization is set up. The fact that these are self-managed teams, about 950 of them at the moment, means that there is a very small back office required. And the back office is very much set up based on the idea that we only do what helps our teams and our nurses deliver better care to their clients. Everything else we strip out. So it's very much of a simplification, total focus and ruthless focus on keeping things as small and as simple as possible. And that results in a back office of only 50 staff for an organization of nowadays 14,000 people. So you can imagine that the overhead costs of the organization are much lower than your average organization. As a matter of fact, it's about 8% compared to your normal organization of 25% overhead. So how does the business case then work? Okay, so we have higher qualified personnel. That increases my cost. But then I focus really on the self-reliance of the patient and the informal network, and that actually results in much better care with a much quicker outcome. So we see typically patients being discharged from the Buurtzorg teams after about 5 months of care instead of 7 months. I'm talking averages here. On top of that, we have this much more streamlined, self-managed organizational model using also smart IT to support, and that results in much lower overhead costs. And on top of that, because of the care quality, you see much lower system costs in terms of emergency admissions to hospital, presentations to GPs, etc. So everybody wins. Now, IT plays quite an important role in this, and again, it's all designed based on the principle of how can we keep it as simple as possible, and let's only do those things that help our care professionals deliver better care. That means that their frontline tool, which you saw in the video just earlier, a tablet-based tool, is extremely flexible. It helps, it supports the nurse in doing the assessment, the care plan, recording of her activities, planning the rota and things like that, but it forces very, very little indeed. So the nurse is always in control. However, it supports, it prompts, it suggests, but it doesn't force anything. On top of that, it provides very good team performance, real-time information, so that the team can always discuss and manage its own performance, because that ultimately is what is at the center of a self-managed team. Furthermore, it addresses the need for these local teams to still be part and learn as a much wider organization. The downside of small local teams could be that you have insulation and not an organizational learning effect that larger organizations that are more top-down perhaps might be achieving more quickly and more effectively. So the internal Facebook, as we sometimes call it in Buurtzorg, helps teams getting in touch with each other, learning from each other, finding each other specialists, and getting each other's advice on matters that are important. And there are, of course, learning modules, protocols, videos, all sorts of things that help them do their work better, more effectively. And very importantly, it also provides access to the care records for the clients and their immediate families. So they have direct access to the care records. They can communicate with their carers through the tool. They don't have to. They can simply pick up the phone, and that still happens a lot as well. And finally, the back office can actually derive 95% of the information, if not more, that they need to satisfy invoicing, regulatory authorities, and all the rest of it, everything they need to manage the organization and to satisfy external parties through the information that's already available in the tool without bothering the nurses for further reporting or anything else. Now, the next generation of this tool is applying also further elements of artificial intelligence, where thanks to the large amounts of data, I mean, we're talking 80,000 patients a year through this organization nowadays, the large amounts of data allow for an incredible amount of learning as well, which again can be translated into prompts and help for the frontline care professionals. And that could be at a macro scale. For instance, one thing that Buurtzorg identified was that male clients struggle more in a serious winter than female clients. If you know that, as an organization, you can consider, hey, should I do something with my male clients in the run-up to the winter period and give them a little bit of extra attention one way or the other? But it could also be very much on the individual level. Hey, there is a profile of a certain patient. We know from other cases that these type of clients may benefit from X, Y, and Z. And again, it's prompted, it's not forced, but it is information that the care professional can take into consideration. Now, the growth of Buurtzorg was tremendous, and very much based on a pull effect, word of mouth, clients speaking to each other and care professionals speaking to each other, because both clients turn out to really like this model. They like the professional relation, or the personal relationships with their carers, and the fact that it was all familiar to them. The care professionals like the freedom that they regained. Yes, it was almost an old model, as Sylvia said in the video. We used to work like that 20 years ago, some of the more experienced district nurses tell me, but very much with the freedom of an innovative organizational model supported by very high state-of-the-art IT. And that allowed an organic model of growth to take place in the Netherlands, which perhaps is a little bit more difficult to replicate here in the UK. But the external, I hope this is not the music that tells me I need to stop. Not only in the Netherlands the model started to grow, there were a lot of care organizations around the world that heard of these fantastic results, not only high satisfaction rates, but also low costs. And of course, that led to Buurtzorg responding to requests from all over the world to partner up with organizations. And as you can see, we have various pilots and partnerships operating around the globe at the moment. Now, in the UK, we are doing something similar. And as you know, context is everything, Esther already referred to it. And we cannot simply bring in the Buurtzorg model and plonk it into the UK and expect it to work perfectly. We have larger, more complex organizations that deliver all sorts of services, and therefore, at best, what we can probably help to create is a hybrid organization of hierarchy and cell-based structure, and a cell or autonomous team-based structure that Buurtzorg employs. So what we do is we work with organizations throughout the country to try and find the best way of doing this. That means, as I said, not a lift and shift approach, but it very much means finding local solutions for local context and trying to replicate as much as possible of the Buurtzorg model where we can and adjust it where we have to. And what you see on the map is a couple of sites where we are working at the moment. The green sites are active trials. We have teams operating there, working either in NHS organizations, local authorities, or combinations thereof. The yellow sites are areas where similar pilots are in preparation, and the reds are the ones where we are still talking, but we're hoping to move on to real action pretty soon. So how do you do that in a small setting? Well, you try to create a bit of a greenfield area within your existing organization. That means that you have to create a bubble almost, where different rules of law apply, where gravity doesn't apply. All of a sudden you apply different physical rules. And that means that you have to really try to keep almost the standard rest of the organization away from it a little bit, because you are now going to give an awful lot of responsibility to these frontline teams, but you also have to rethink the support that these teams need. I told you about try and strip out everything that doesn't add to delivering better care. Well, that's a novel concept, let's face it, for most of our organizations. So to try and prove that results in better care more efficiently is a bit of a challenge, and creating that bubble in the organization is so far probably one of our biggest challenge. But the way we approach that is very much on an iterative basis. When you implement this, there is a massive steep learning curve to climb. You will have to not only teach your care professionals to care in a different way, working on that self-reliance, remember, and taking ownership of the holistic care needs of the client. Help them also manage themselves as self-managed teams. Again, a very novel concept for most, but very much also retrain the rest of the organization to work differently with your care professionals and try and encourage them to step back when it's most of the time, and only step in with requests or support when they're asked to do so. And that requires an iterative approach. That requires an expectation that you will hit bumps along the road, that you will have to learn something, sometimes in a very painful way, but that you have to stay the course. And that means an iterative approach, a bit borrowed from the agile approach in the world of IT that we use with our clients, so that you understand that actually this model will improve as we go along. And once you've ironed out 80–90% of the creases and have scaled most of the hurdles, that's the time to move on from 1 or 2 or 3 teams to rolling it out more widely across your organization. And that's very much what we are looking forward to in the rest of our client group. So where are we now with about 20 or so pilot teams? Well, I think we've proven through various evaluations that also in the UK, this model works. It delivers great care, and patients really love it. It creates great jobs, and care professionals really love to work in this way. But we are still working on nailing that support side of things and getting the rest of the organization to get it, and evidencing that this actually results in great savings for the organization and the healthcare system at large. So I'll leave you with the words of one of the Buurtzorg founders, and I thank you very much for your attention.